Why play Smolder Bot? Well, he scales into a late game god. He has solid mobility, he deals great AoE damage, and he's just very fun to play. However, he is squishy, especially if his E gets interrupted, and his early game is weaker, needing time to stack his Q. Smolder's passive is he gains a stack every time he hits an enemy with an ability, or when his Q last hits a minion or monster. All of his abilities deal additional damage the more stacks he has. Smolder's Q is a point-and-click ability which deals damage to the target hit and applies on-hit effects. When Smolder has 25 stacks of his passive, this will also deal damage in a circle around the target. At 125 stacks, it also starts firing additional fireballs in a cone behind the target, and at 225 stacks, enemies hit are set on fire, taking true damage and get executed if they go too low on health. Smolder's W is a long-range rectangular skill shot which starts travelling fast and then slows down towards the end. Enemies hit are dealt damage and slowed, and hitting an enemy champion deals damage to all enemies in a nearby circle. Smolder's E causes him to take flight and gain a large burst of movement speed. While in flight, he can move over terrain and starts firing bolts at nearby enemies. Smolder's ultimate is a very long-range rectangular skill shot which deals damage in a wave along the ability. It grants sight of the area, and enemies hit are dealt damage, and if they're in the center of the ability, they take more damage and are slowed. If Smolder's hit by this ability, he's also healed. For combos, start auto-attack into your ult, auto-attack into Q, auto-attack into W, then auto-attack into your E. And if you cast your ultimate behind you, this gets the damage out even faster. For matchups, Smolder is great into some of the more passive laners who will let him scale faster, and he can struggle against some of the harder lane bullies who will delay him stacking his passive. For runes, Fleet is a great choice if you want to get through the early game by having more safety. Otherwise, Comet is a great choice if you're going to be safer when your opponents poke down more. For build order, you actually start Ring and Pots as it allows you to stack your passive even faster. After this, pick up an Essence Reaver and Tier 2 boots. Following this, Quick Blades, RFC and Shojin are all great pickups before finishing your build with any of these as needed. For skill order, start Q then W then E before maxing Q then W then E, taking ult whenever you can. However, if you're going the Comet build, take 3 points in W first instead. For summoner spells, take Flash and Ghost. For the best synergy, as Smolder doesn't bring any engage or lockdown, he pairs well with a support who can engage for him, as well as CC any enemies going for him. Starting the game, your two massive priorities are farming well and stacking your passive well. At this stage in the game, there really isn't much else you should be doing other than using your Q for stacks, and occasionally using your W to poke your opponent and get more stacks. And only use your E when you have to escape or chasing down a kill. And while your E is on cooldown, you have to play incredibly safe. At this stage in the game, you are just fairly weak, so unless the enemy gets low or the jungler comes to gank, just keep farming. And when you hit 25 stacks, your Q now becomes an AoE, which means you can attack the backline a couple of times each to get 3 stacks with 1 Q. Enter in the mid game, take your tower as soon as possible and rotate mid. You can siege and start rotating to fights at this point, but your main focus is still going to be on farming stacks. Entering late game team fights, you want to be at 225 stacks, which basically gives you the permanent Elder buff. Play the backline hyper carry, weaving in your auto attacks between your abilities, while watching your insane AoE damage burn through their entire team.